after me. I don't give a...
Hey guys, welcome back. So we're doing, actually I'm going to film part 2 and part 3 to this. So the next video I'll still be wearing this outfit. So this is the Diet, Health, and the Wisdom of Crowds. I think this guy is really clever and funny. So let's get into it. So this is where we ended up.
Now, before we move on, I want to talk about another book that picks up and extends on some of these same themes. It was written by a brilliant author, trader, mathematician, philosopher, a guy named Nassim Nicholas Taleb. It's called Anti-Fragile, and it explains why some systems are fragile, which means they break or completely blow up under pressure, and other systems are anti-fragile, which means they survive or even get stronger under pressure. The human body's anti-fragile. If you're exposed to germs and they don't kill you, your immune system gets stronger.
It's interesting listening to some of the things that he said so far that can correlate so much now to what's going on with the virus. You know, I've just noticed a couple things here and there. This is one of them.
If you stress your body through exercise, you get stronger. That's anti-fragile. Much of the book explains why the Anointed create fragile systems. Only Taleb does not call them the Anointed because that would be rude. He prefers the term the intellectual yet idiot.
My grandfather used to say educated idiots. You know, he would say just because someone has a whole bunch of initials after their last name doesn't mean they're necessarily smart. And I do find that to be true in a lot of different instances. You know, experience, there's a lot to be said for experience.
He describes them as the people who feel qualified to tell us what to do, what to eat, what to think, etc., even though their only real skill is passing exams written by people like them.
Exactly.
One of the reasons they create fragile systems is what he calls neomania, which is once again falling in love with ideas and theories and things and technologies just because they're new. Taleb's not opposed to things that are new, but he reminds us things that have been around for a long, long time have survived for a reason. They've proven their value over time. They're anti-fragile. And if we apply that to food, which he does, which foods are going to be good for us? The foods that have been around for a long, long time. Here's a quote from the book. My rule is drink no liquid that is not at least 1,000 years old, so its fitness has been tested. I drink just wine, water, and coffee. No soft drinks. We could probably get him to try kombucha, but you see his point.
It's interesting. That's a kind of extreme for me, but he has a point. I think, you know, like he said, its fitness has been tested. I do love tea.
Another reason they create fragile systems, they place too much value on academic theories and not enough value on practical experience. And that's because they think knowledge works like this. Ivy League researchers discover scientific principles, and then those principles are put into practical use. In other words, Harvard researchers discover and publish the laws of aerodynamics, and then birds begin to fly.
That's really funny. That's actually really funny.
But that's not the way it works in the real world. In the real world, human beings figure out what works through experience. Later, the university researchers come along and explain why it works.
I mean, okay, so if you think about it, you know, I heard a young person the other day say that Isaac Newton invented gravity. And I was like, he didn't invent gravity. Gravity's always been. He put words to describe gravity, which is kind of like the bird flying thing. So, yeah. That's yeah.
But we don't have to know why something works to know that it works. Or as he puts it, theories come and go. Experience stays. The final reason intellectual yet idiot types create fragile systems, they want our decisions to be turned over to a central authority. And he explains why that's a bad idea. If we make our own decisions, whether as individuals, cities within a state, or states within a country, we learn from each other's successes and failures. If you try something and it works, I learn from you. If I try something and it fails, you learn from me. You learn what not to do, but you were not harmed in the process.
It's kind of like parenting, you know, you try to impart on your children the wisdom that you learn from mistakes, hoping they don't make those mistakes. Now, those of you who are parents probably realize that they won't listen to you most of the time, but, you know, that's kind of the first thought I had.
So over time, and as a group, we become smarter and stronger and more anti-fragile. But if we turn our decisions over to a central authority, the capacity to learn from each other goes away, and then one bad decision will affect everyone.
I'm not going to get political on this channel, but this kind of makes my heart hurt because that's what's going on right now. Everything's so politicized, and I feel like our system here in America is very fragile right now. No one's agreeing on anything. No one seems to be working together.
Which makes the system fragile. As he puts it, top down is usually irreversible, so mistakes tend to stick, whereas bottom up is gradual and incremental, with creation and destruction along the way. So, with all that in mind, let's take a brief look at what happened with our dietary guidelines. And if you keep Sol and Taleb in mind, I think you'll see this was entirely predictable. We had a problem. By the 1950s, too many Americans were dying of heart disease. And then along came a bold, new, exciting idea on how to fix it. Now, this idea was theoretical. It did not come from years of experience. And because it was a bad idea, it probably would have died out, except the Anointed fell in love with the idea. And we ended up with a grand plan. In the late 70s, the McGovern Commission on Nutrition decided we must convince Americans to cut back on saturated fat and cholesterol and to eat a whole lot more grains. Neo-mania kicked in. If foods that have been around forever are going to kill us, well then the foods that are going to save us are the ones created by modern science. As Taleb writes, chemists assumed they could produce a fat replacement that was superior to lard or butter. What Mother Nature does is rigorous until proven otherwise. What humans and science do is flawed until proven otherwise. The non-natural needs to prove its benefits, not the natural.
It's so interesting because I have preached whole food for a long time, and I'm not saying that you should never have anything processed or you should never indulge yourself in a craving. I'm not saying that. Like right now, the only thing I eat that's processed is protein powder. And I do think that it makes your palate more sensitive. It makes things, to me, it makes things, I feel like I taste things better now. I don't have the cravings. Like I can put down some French fries from McDonald's. Oh, Del Taco too. Both of those are like my two favorite French fry places to get French fries. And I have not had a craving for that in a really long time. When I have a craving now, it's usually like I want a ribeye. Yeah, steak is usually the thing that I crave the most. And, you know, also the quality of your food over quantity of your food. I find myself, when I switch to grass-fed meat, my digestion improved so much. I stopped having those, just, you know, when you eat a big meal and you just feel it sit, just like almost underneath your heart, and it's like a rock, and you're, you know, it's like that Thanksgiving feeling, you're unzipping your pants and you're like, oh, I'm so miserable. I didn't have that anymore. And I just digested things better. I feel like my body was using the nutrients I put into it more efficiently. There was less waste. Sorry, that's kind of gross, but, you know, coming from my food. So I mean, I agree with this totally. And I think most people would. I mean,
natural. Was there evidence that the theory behind the grand plan was a bad idea? Of course there was. As you all know, and as Dr. Price documented, there were people all over the world living on diets that were high in animal fat, but they were healthy. They had low rates of heart disease. And there were clinical studies like this and this and this, all showing that switching from animal fats to vegetable fats did not lower the rate of heart disease. In fact, in 2 of these studies, the rate of heart disease went up.
so here's something else that's interesting. I shared a little bit about my blood work. Something else I found really fascinating. I had been eating a ribeye once a week, bison almost every day. When I had my labs done, and I checked my total cholesterol, and it was like 109. And everyone, so they're like, you eat red meat regularly? And yeah, I eat it. I mean, I would eat it every day. I don't have a problem with that, but I'm trying to lean down. So, yeah. And it's interesting too, if you look at people who are carnivore, like those, I always think of Papa Swolio, because he doesn't preach the carnivore diet, but he does eat nose to tail. I mean, he eats raw liver. Like I can't do organ meats, but if you can, more power to you. But he doesn't have any issues with cholesterol, high triglycerides, and all that kind of thing. And I just think that it's really fascinating. And I do believe that if you go to a whole food diet, you're going to find a lot of your symptoms going away. You can reverse disease by eating a whole food diet. I got to a point about 6 years ago where I started looking at food as medicine, because it can heal you. Just like, okay, I was on a TikTok binging, watching all of these obese women, a couple men, but mostly women, doing like what I eat in a day. This one girl says, what I eat in a day as a fat girl who very controversially doesn't give a fuck that she's fat. And her skin, you can see her skin getting worse and worse and worse with each video. And you can see the quality of her food correlating with her skin. Now, don't get me wrong, I had it right here, and I'm a picker, and I scratch in my sleep, so I look like a leper right now. But you can see where what you put in to your mouth, into your body, it will come out your pores. It will, just like if you're eating, you can look at someone who eats, a diet that's high in antioxidants. They almost kind of glow, like their skin just looks really good. And I'm not saying there's not the anomaly where people just genetically have shitty skin. My youngest daughter struggled with acne, and we took her to my dermatologist who does my fillers and Botox, and she looked at her and was like, you need this, put her on it. And I'm not joking, within 4 weeks, her acne was completely gone. And she doesn't deal with it as much as she did when she was, like 15, and she's 20 now. But she also changed her diet too. So diet is so important, and can be so beneficial, and it can also be so detrimental. Yeah, so I mean, I do advocate for whole food. Like I said, I'm not saying never have French fries again, or never indulge yourself and, have a nice meal out or something, because trust me, when Bob and I go to Jamaica next month, I'm eating whatever I want when I'm there. But what I want is lobsters and mangoes, because it's lobster and mango season there. So that's what I love. They'll bring me like a plate, like a platter of mangoes, because they know how much I love it.
But none of that matters once the Anointed have fallen in love with the bold, new, exciting idea. I'm going to play just the audio here from a news clip I used in Fathead. It is a doctor speaking first.
Oh, by the way, I did look up Fathead. Go watch it. Justice, let's make sure we link his movie Fathead in the description. You guys, this movie is he did such a great job with this, and my jaw was just on the floor. It was on the floor, but at the same time, I was like, I'm not surprised, but I was surprised. So definitely watch it.
McGovern.
I have pleaded in my report and will plead again orally here for more research on the problem before we make announcements to the American public.
Well, I would only argue that senators don't have the luxury that a research scientist does of waiting until every last shred of evidence is in.
We don't have time to wait for the evidence to come in. We must act now.
How irresponsible is that? And again, we can correlate what's going on in the world right now with that, because I mean, I did take the vaccine. Everyone in my family now has, including my husband, and we did it for really selfish reasons, because well, Bob needs to for work. I mean, his work can say if you're not vaccinated, you can't deploy, and that's how we make our money. But I want to travel, and my kids want to travel, and my youngest two are still in school, and they wanted to go back to school without masks. And Jordan goes to UNLV, and she just found out that you don't have to wear masks on campus if you're vaccinated. So that's good, but that's a scary thought of not waiting for research results, that we have to act now. And I get it with what's going on in the world right now, that we did have to do something. But there's so much going on with that. We're not going to get into that.
And of course, the Anointed assumed that no good, intelligent person would possibly oppose the grand plan. And so, as Gary Taubes explained in his...
Okay, I'm going to go back to it, you guys. I'm so sorry. That no good, intelligent person could possibly oppose the grand plan. I was always taught, and Bob and I taught our children, to question everything. I have been criticized, especially at the beginning of the pandemic. I was criticized because I was like, well, why do we need to wear masks? Fauci said no. Now he says yes. Then he says, and I understand that there's data coming in all the time and things change. I understand that. But I've had people on social media, I think if they saw me, they would just run me over with their car because I had a different opinion. Or I questioned, okay, I'm not a scientist. My daughter and her boyfriend are, but I'm not a scientist. I can ask them questions, but I feel like there's nothing wrong with questioning, instead of just blindly going, okay, well, these really smart people with all these degrees said this is what we should do. Sometimes having a conversation with people, maybe outside of your purview, will make you go, oh, you know what? That's a good point. We ought to look into that. So, I mean, that's how I feel about politics too. I'm going to respect everybody's opinions. Those are your opinions, and it's no skin off my nose what you believe. I'm going to respect your beliefs, and then just respect me and mine, and be cool with it. So how it used to be. Remember those days when we could have different opinions and still be friends?
His book, and Nina Teicholz recounted in her book, a lot of scientists found out the hard way opposing the grand plan was a great way to kill your career. The Anointed decided we had to turn the decisions about which foods are good for us over to a central authority. So they did. And we ended up with this advice. And then the central authority imposed the grand plan wherever it could. Schools, prisons, hospitals, military bases, and other government facilities.
I'm going to put a picture in here. I'm going to put two pictures. I'm going to have Justice put these two pictures up. So my husband is deployed to a location he has not been to before, and it's extremely remote, and the food is garbage. And it's a military base, and a government facility, like this slide says. I'm going to show you the crap they're feeding these people. But I sent Bob a whole bunch of protein powder. I sent him beef jerky. I sent him protein bars, granola bars, and that kind of thing. And then I sent him organic fruit roll-ups where the only ingredient's fruit, because they either can't get fruit, and the only kind he would eat is one with the peel. And I said, well, what about like a fresh salad? And he's like, well, if you'd like a side of E. coli, then yes, you can get a salad. He's like, but I'm not chancing it because people have gotten E. coli because they're not cleaning the produce properly. But wait until you see these pictures. They are absolutely hideous. Like, okay, one of them I'm going to put up. It was one of his troops who, I think it was supposed to be like curry or something. And you can see a backbone. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. You can see oh God, it's so gross. You can see a backbone, and then behind it, you can see the vegetables that have been it looks like succotash with broccoli in it. And I'm pretty sure this mystery bone is a chicken back, neck, something. And you can kind of, if you look really close, you see it's like swimming in oil. Super gross. So that's kind of nauseating. And then there's another one where his dinner was, okay, remember when we were in school and you would get boiled carrots on your plate? So boiled carrots, a corn dog. I'm not sure what the meat is on the inside of that. The brown thing you'll see next is a veal patty, he said. And then I think the thing under the veal patty is some kind of completely mangled potato dish. And then the final one, again, the veggies don't look so horrible in this one. It's cauliflower, peas, green beans, carrots, broccoli. It definitely doesn't look like it's been just boiled for the gods, and maybe there might be something good in it. And then the back right corner of that plate, I don't know if that's more corn or mac and cheese. I think it's corn. Yeah, it's corn with those red things, like that's in a pimento or in all, you know what I mean? Those little, is it a pimento? And then some kind of pulled meat sandwich. And then I don't even know what that thing in the back is. It might be a piece of, I don't even know. And then of course 18 pounds of ketchup, because ketchup is Bob's blood type. But if that is what's approved by the USDA, by the Anointed ones, they need to go back to fucking school because, okay, I will say Bob has visible abs now, which is from not eating most of the food there, which is why I sent him, so much protein powder so at least he could get some protein in his diet. But he's only eating like once a day. He said one because it's just so overly processed and disgusting. And he said half the time he doesn't know what it is. So that's gross. If it's just gross.
Facilities were all required to follow the dietary guidelines. We've even had cases where parents who send their kids lunch from home were told they had to follow the dietary guidelines.
Can you imagine that? If that ever happened with one of my children, that school would be renamed the Tia Middleton School because no, you don't impose your fucked up dietary guidelines on my kid. It's none of your business. Unless my child is 6 years old and 250 pounds or 6 years old and 30 pounds, step in. But seriously, this actually, I don't know if he's going to read this. A preschooler at West Hoke Elementary School ate 3 chicken nuggets for lunch January 30th because the school told her the lunch her mother packed was not nutritious. The girl's turkey and cheese sandwich, a banana, potato chips, and apple juice did not meet the U.S. Department of Agricultural guidelines, according to the interpretation of the person who was inspecting all lunch boxes in the Moore at 4 classroom. Can you imagine this? Oh my Lanta. That was back in 2012. I wonder what happened with that.
With the lunch they sent from home. A school in Chicago finally told parents, we're not even going to let you pack your kids' lunch at home because you're not following the guidelines. We are going to make sure your kids eat a healthy lunch like this.
Do you remember when President Obama was in office and Michelle's thing was getting nutritious lunches in school, and then the kids would take pictures of their school lunch, and it would just be something disgusting like this, and they would put it on Twitter and hashtag thanks Michelle. It was pretty funny, and this is no diss on Obama or Michelle. I just thought it was really funny because you probably can still go on Twitter and search the hashtag. It's pretty. The lunches were just. That's so gross.
So that's how we got where we are. It follows the usual pattern. And as Dr. Phil would say, how's that working out for you? Well, you know how it's working out for us. I'm not going to go through a bunch of statistics, but I will run some headlines by you. Baby boomers are fatter and sicker than their parents were at the same age. A record number of kids now are developing fatty liver disease.
Can you imagine being a kid with fatty liver disease? And like this article saying too, the rise in type 2 diabetes. Okay, so like I said, whole food, right? Here's the other thing I think is detrimental right now to our young people and getting a proper diet is so many families, both parents have to work. And, the kids might be, when I was a kid, we were called latchkey kids. We had our own house key and we let ourselves in for the couple hours until one of our parents came home. But I feel like there's just less families are sitting down to dinner. When Bob was active duty, we sat down to dinner as a family almost every night. That was really, really important. It was really important to him. Like, I didn't grow up with that. I can remember family meals were like holidays and celebrations. It wasn't like every night at dinner. We would do you guys remember TV trays? We'd sit in front of the TV with our TV trays and watch TV while we ate. So I do think that's a problem. And then people, because they don't have time or less time, they choose convenience foods, and then this is what's happening.
And type 2 diabetes. Some 10-year-olds are so overweight now, they need hip replacement.
Can you imagine being a 10-year-old and you need a hip replacement? Oh my God.
And a staggering number of our troops are fat and tired.
Okay, this is interesting. Again, this is something and this is from Military Times. It says October 3rd. I'm not sure what year. I could probably look it up. 2018 RAND report. Okay. So we go out to Nellis Air Force Base usually at least once a week. And there have been times I've been out there and I'm like, I don't remember troops being this big when Bob was active duty. Troops will get basically kicked out if they're too fat because they're not fit to fight. They do have a physical standard they have to meet to be in the military. It's not good to get kicked out for being fat because it's usually an other than honorable discharge, and then that follows you for the rest of your life. So, this says in 2015, 1 in 3 young adults were considered too fat to enlist. That's not good. If the DFAC is serving this crap to my husband, these kids, that's what they're eating. And especially the young enlisted troops who live on base, who have less money available to them, and the DFAC is where they eat most of their meals, and that's what they have access to, it's going to be difficult.
Which is a far cry from how they look going into World War II.
Yep.
So I think we can sum up the effects of the dietary guidelines by quoting the always quotable Yogi Berra. We made the wrong mistakes, except the anointed don't make mistakes. So the problem can't be them.
See, that's always a problem anyway, when they can't, and it's not new, is it?
It has to be us. Earlier you saw that announcement from Public Health England, the ones who explained that saturated fat will clog your kitchen sink. An official from Public Health England recently explained why Britain has an obesity problem. And here it is. It's because people aren't following well-founded government advice. Here's what that advice looks like. Got some vegetable oil to keep your sink open there. And why aren't they following the well-founded government advice? Because they're confused. In other words, the plan was good, but people didn't follow it correctly because they're stupid.
That's so insulting.
In the United States, we got this explanation for why the food pyramid didn't make us all lean and healthy. The food pyramid has been described by many as difficult to understand. And as obesity rates would suggest, has gone largely unheeded by many. In other words, the plan was good, but
Okay, I want to look back at that. Okay. So here's the food pyramid guide for America. Okay. So the bottom is what you're supposed to have the most of, right? Bread, cereal, rice, and pasta. 6 to 11 servings a day. That's insane. Okay, 2 to 4 servings of fruit, 3 to 5 of veg, milk, yogurt, and cheese, 2 to 3 servings, meat, poultry, fish, dry beans, eggs, and nuts, 2 to 3 servings. Fats, oils, and sweets used sparingly. Can you, okay, I know for me, if I ate 6 to 11 servings of bread, cereal, rice, and pasta, I would gain weight immediately. I'm on really low carb right now. Not that that's my normal diet, but I'm, like you guys know, I'm trying to get as lean as I can, see what I can do. Like, I'm, experimenting with myself right now. That is really, really unfortunate.
the food pyramid has been described by many as difficult to understand. And as obesity rates would suggest, has gone largely unheeded by many. In other words, the plan was good, but people didn't follow it correctly because they're stupid. Apparently, people were trying to shape their meals into actual pyramids. And when that fell down, they gave up and got fat. So what we need to do, you see, is take this hugely complicated triangle and reformat the advice as a nice simple circle. And when the circle doesn't work, which it won't, we'll probably get the food square. Maybe the food parallelogram, I don't know. But to be fair to the USDA, they did not repackage exactly the same advice. Because in the 2010 guidelines, they admitted that people have gotten fatter, they admitted rates of diabetes are going up, and so we need to cut saturated fat even more. In other words, we need to do the same thing again, only bigger.
What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result? Oh dear.
So, let's move on to the good news, shall we? Ever since I made Fathead, people have been asking me on podcasts and such, what are we going to do to get the USDA to change its advice? And I always give the same answer, that's not my goal. I don't think we need national dietary guidelines any more than we need national haircutting guidelines.
Okay, so that everyone's laughing, but I think about, I know this is an extreme, when he said national haircutting guidelines, I mean, look at North Korea. Like, they have national haircutting guidelines and they're literally rationed food and here's what you get to have. I am really a big believer in smaller government, and I don't want government coming into my house and telling me how I should eat or how I should feed my children. I mean, they're adults now, but you know what I mean.
My goal is not to change the USDA. I don't think that's possible. My goal is to convince people to stop listening to them.
That's probably more doable.
Yes.
Okay, look at that little blurb right there. You see the blue box? 23% of consumers agree that the U.S. dietary guidelines are good for them. So there's a huge disconnect, because does everyone else not believe that? Because, I mean, it's not. They're not good for you.
The great news is, because of what a lot of people have been doing, including many of you, that is happening. According to a recent survey, 23% of Americans still believe the USDA's dietary guidelines are actually good for them. I think that's phenomenal. Sales of full-fat dairy products are going up. Sales of butter are going way up.
I will say that I would say probably for 25 years, I've been a proponent of full-fat products. I can go to my fridge right now. I have grass-fed salted butter. If I have anything like for my tea, it's full-fat cream. I don't put a ton in, like maybe a tablespoon, just to, lighten it up a little bit. But your body knows what to do with fat and how to process it. That stuff that they're taking out the natural thing and putting some bullshit chemical in it, your body's like, what the hell is this?
Sales of low-fat products are going down, and Americans are now buying more red meat for the first time in decades.
I remember being a kid, and my dad's wife at the time, not my mother, she was, oh God, she was terrible. She would take skim milk and she would mix it with powdered milk to make it go like, ugh, gross. I don't know what made me think of that.
In other words, the wisdom of crowds is finally striking back.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So why is this happening now? Because there have always been people who knew the dietary guidelines were nonsense. Some of them are in this room and have been saying that forever. So why didn't this happen 35 years ago? Well, a little more than 35 years ago, I got my degree in journalism. One of the things we learned about was the extraordinary influence of the information gatekeepers. Information flowed from the top down through a relatively small number of gatekeepers and then down to the rest of us, and that's where it stopped.
How pervasive is this today? This is incredible. This is just blowing my mind.
And at the time, that was true. I saw that up close and personal. Because when I got out of college, I got a job as a writer for a small health magazine, and guess what? I was one of the people writing articles telling you to cut back on your saturated fat and cholesterol. I came here to apologize, of course. But I didn't know any better, because at the time, researching an article was a process that I called round up the usual suspects. Oh, you're writing an article about what causes heart disease? Well, you talk to the American Heart Association. But for background, you would read newspaper and magazine articles written by reporters who talk to the American Heart Association. And then for quotes, you would...
Kind of hard to be unbiased, isn't it?
Call a doctor who got his information from the American Heart Association. So I not only wrote articles promoting this advice, telling people to cut back on the bacon and eggs and eat those healthy foods like margarine and skim milk and heart-healthy cereal, I followed that advice. And in retrospect, I wish the negative effects had just kicked me in the ass really hard all at once, because then I might have figured it out. But that didn't happen. What happened was, I got a little fatter and a little sicker each year. I ended up developing asthma, I started getting arthritis, then digestive problems, I was getting a lot of sinus infections, I got a big patch of psoriasis on the back of my head.
See, food is medicine. I mean, there are definitely things that you can cut out of your diet that, like the psoriasis thing, skin issues, dairy is a big contributor to those things. So I'm sure I've talked about this before, but I've done food sensitivity tests, and it's amazing. When I did it, I did it because I was bloating so badly, and I was like, what the hell is making me bloat like this? Like, I eat a whole food diet. I don't understand why I'm bloating so badly every single day of my life. And so I did the food sensitivity tests, and then I've eliminated those things that I had a moderate and high reactivity to, and I don't bloat anymore. So I know when my youngest daughter cut out dairy, it helped her skin quite a bit. So food is medicine, you guys,
And
for
at
sure.
the time, I told myself, this is what happens when you get older. I was in my 30s. People in their 30s are like puppies to me now. I mean, they're cute, but you don't want them on the good rug. You know? The point is, a lot of people were following this advice and getting the same negative results, but we didn't know that because the information flowed like this. Well, nowadays, when people are frustrated with diet and health advice that doesn't work, they do what any intelligent person would do, go out on the internet and complain to several thousand perfect strangers.
The non-fat cookies were a prime example of how, according to some scientists and science writers, low-fat made Americans fatter. Fat-free ads continued to dominate. The low-fat diet reigned supreme in the late 90s. I remember that. As scientists, the federal government, and popular health writers declared the low-fat, high-carbohydrate diet the gold standard for heart health and weight control. Whew. Boy, we know that's not true, don't we?
And that's good, because the wisdom of crowds is based on experience. And when people go online, they are seeing countless experiences like these, which I clipped from my blog. It makes me so upset when I think of how I used to feed my daughter on the advice of her pediatrician and the government. Skim milk, cereal, pasta, bananas, orange juice. I was so frustrated because I couldn't figure out why she was so heavy. I was sent to a diabetes seminar by my doctor. I followed the diet, but my sugar was never under 170 to 180. When I went back and told the nurse, she said I didn't follow the diet.
That's so incredibly insulting. So when I was pregnant with my youngest daughter, I was in the hospital the last 2 months of my pregnancy because I had gestational diabetes that was out of control. We're talking like fasted blood sugars of 300 to 400. So then trying to manage them through the day was a nightmare. And I just was like chasing my blood sugar with insulin all day. And so I went to my OB, and she is a friend of mine, and she said, we're going to put you in the hospital and see. And I kind of feel like there's a reason why I feel like she thought this initially. I think she thought she couldn't be telling me that are they really this bad? So I get admitted to the hospital, and like the second day she comes in to see me, she's like, you weren't joking. These are really out of control, because they were giving me the insulin. They were feeding me the food, and that she could see how badly my blood sugars were. I mean, it was bad. It was really bad.
Correctly.
So that's the end of this part. So we're going to gear up for part 3, and I'll be back, and then you'll see the second part here on Wednesday. I'm gonna still be in this outfit, and then that'll go up on Saturday. So thank you guys for joining me. I love this guy. Remember to go check out his movie Fathead. We'll put it in the description. And then thanks for being here, guys. I appreciate all of you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.